Hi all, I am Gaurav. Welcome to Introduction to Scala. I'm starting this series with an intent of sharing my Scala knowledge.
Hi and welcome back. Let us continue our discussion on creating fraction class. Until now, we have learned how to create instance of fraction class. Up next is to add some more code to create instance and add behavior to our fraction class. So let us get our hands dirty. Until now, we have only created the fractions that have both numerator and denominator, but it is possible to have fractions that only has numerator and by default their denominator is 1. So our next task is to instantiate such fractions. So in order to achieve the same, we'll declare another apply method that takes in only one parameter input, and that is only numerator. And then we'll call our previously defined apply method with this new input parameter and defaulting the denominator as 1. Let's bring back our code into Scala shell, and now we'll try to create our fraction with only numerator. And Scala has successfully created a fraction by defaulting the denominator as 1. Now that we have successfully covered all the scenarios to create the fraction, it is time to move on to behaviors of fraction class. So the first task is to create add method. The method will take in another fraction instance to perform add operation. So to perform add operation, we need to modify both numerator and denominator. New numerator can be formed by multiplication of numerator with incoming fraction denominator and add it with multiplication of denominator with incoming numerator. New denominator can be formed by multiplication of both denominators. Let us try to bring our code into Scala shell, and we get a compilation error. So what is the problem here? Scala has given us a compilation error because none of the numer and denom are public in our class fraction. To make both the parameters as public, let us append it with val. We'll try to compile our code once again, and this time it is successful. Let us declare two fractions so that we can add these two fractions. So our first fraction is 2 by 3 and the second fraction is 3 by 4. Let's try to call the add method on the first instance of fraction, that is f1.add f2, and we get the result as 17 by 12. Let's try to use infix notation here, and we can say f1 add f2, and we'll get the result back again as 17 by 12. So now the next is an obvious task of making the add method as an operator. So let's get back to our code and um, rename our add method as an operator. So we'll delete add method and put plus there. Along with it, I will declare another operation multiplication. So rather than declaring the def multiply, we'll directly use asterisk to make it an operator at the first go itself. In order to write the multiplication method, we'll again need another instance of fraction. Multiplications are rather simple than additions. So in order to perform multiplication, we would be multiplying both numerators and denominators. Let us bring our code back into the Scala shell, and then let us create two instances again to perform various operations on our fractions. So the first instance is again 3 by 4, and then the next instance is 5 by 4. Let us perform various operations such as addition. So I will do f1 plus f2, and that has given us a fraction uh, whose denominator is 1. Let us try to add f1 with f1 and then multiply it with f2. Or we can also do f1 plus f1 multiplied with f2. Alright, so we are able to perform various operations between different instances of fraction, but our fraction should be able to interact with integers as well. So let us try to add an integer to our fraction, and Scala has given us an error. So our next task is to code the addition of fraction with an integer. In order to achieve the same, we will overload the plus operator here. We'll define a new plus operator that will take in as input parameter as integer and return us an instance of fraction. So performing a addition with integer is simple. So we'll multiply our denominator with incoming integer and add it to the numerator, and then we'll keep the denominator as same. Let us define multiplication another multiplication method as well that can accommodate integer multiplication with fraction. Again, we'll be performing a multiplication of numerator with integer and keep the denominator as same. Let's bring our code back into the Scala shell, and then I will create a new fraction instance again as 2 by 3. And now we'll try to add an integer to our fraction, and we have successfully added an integer with the fraction. Let's try a multiplication as well, and it was successful. We have implemented both addition and multiplication in detail. Our next task is to implement division, subtraction, less than, and max. The implementation of all these methods are pretty much the same as add and multiplication. You can implement these on your own. I'm putting up all these methods here without going in much detail. Similar to add and multiplication, both subtraction and division have two overloaded methods. One of the method would take in incoming parameter as fraction, while other would take the incoming parameter as int. If you are not aware about how the division and subtraction is implemented in fraction, you can do a Google search. These are pretty standard operations. Once you have implemented subtraction and division, you can play around with all the operations of fraction class. Next we have is less than method and max operator that are again pretty simple to implement. Once you are done with all the implementations, you can keep this compiled class for future use. You can also use these classes in other classes to perform any fraction operation. You can Google out other operations of fractions and enhance this class. Scala is pretty good to implement any mathematical function. Hope you have enjoyed this video and have a better understanding of Scala concepts. This was the last video on basics of Scala topic. Now you should be able to code Scala. I will be putting out more videos on advanced topics of Scala. See you next time.
Thanks for watching. Please post your comments and suggestions.